Welcome! In this video I'm going to explore with you the nature of complexity and the use of the Cynefin Framework. What's the difference between complex and complicated? The shortest way once has been described to me like that. If you kick a ball, it is complicated to calculate the trajectory that it's going to take. If you kick a dog, that's complex. Now, I hope we're not going to kick dogs here. But anyway, I'm sure you all experience the situations where you're exposed to complex environments, to complex challenges, and you all realize what it means to respond to them and how fundamentally different it is when things are complex as compared to ordered. Now, for example, that could be that your customers are suddenly behaving in a way that you don't really understand, and it's very difficult to find out. Or maybe suddenly the mood in the team changes in an unexpected way because of something that has happened, but you don't know how now you can balance that back and bring back the spirit that you had before. Or maybe when you behave as parents towards a child, you realize that over time the little tricks and recipes that you were using are suddenly no longer working. So the question is, how can we address these challenges? What are some guidelines that we can use in changing the way we are dealing with the situation when it's about complexity and when it's not about something ordered, something structured? What we're going to use for this is the Cynefin Framework, and we are going to go there from a very practical experience that you all recognize. We're going to talk about shopping. For a start, think about how you do your shopping for packaged household goods like toothpaste, toilet paper, salt or sugar. What influences your choice? How stable are your routines? What do you do step by step? What changes if you deviate from your habits? In a moment I'm going to tell you how I think most people do it, but first I would like you to take some time and think about it. So you may stop the video now, think about it, maybe talk about it if you're watching this with somebody else, and then come back. What did you come up with? I expect there is a lot of routine in the way you do this. So you may go to the same supermarket or to a limited number of supermarkets, depending whether you go by car or on the way home from work. It may also be that you have a routine way of finding out what you have to buy, like shopping lists. Maybe you have an online shopping list, maybe you use post-its on the fridge door, whatever. All these means are routines that you have developed over time. You might also stick to certain brands, so maybe the toothpaste, you're not going to try out new brands all the time, or you might have some stable criteria, like for example, it can be any kind of toilet paper as long as the package is small enough to fit in the little cupboard where you keep your supplies. Now, the important thing is that you know what you want when you go shopping. You know where to go, where to find it. They usually have it, so there are no surprises there. So once you decide to go and do your shopping, you just have a process and you run through this process. One step by the other, you go there, take 3 of that, 5 of that, put it in the trolley, go to the counter and pay. And that's what you're going to do. By the way, you also find when you do your shopping, for example, you've taken a flat for holidays and you're somewhere where you don't know, and you do your shopping in that supermarket, usually it takes much longer, it takes much more concentration, because you can't rely on the same routines anymore. That's another signal. So this, however, is going to change quite a bit when we move to the next context. So now imagine you have to replace a broken window handle, or you have to buy a new printer for your office. What's different from the grocery shopping we've just talked about? Again, you can pause the video for a moment to think and then come back. How did this one go? I imagine you have come up with quite a different approach compared to the grocery shopping. With the window handle, there is usually just one replacement that fits the broken handle. But you have no idea where to find it. It has to fit the mechanism. Probably you want it to look the same as the other ones in the flat, but you're not in the habit of buying window handles. So what do? You have to research. Maybe you find a serial number or a brand on the handle once you take it off. or you have to go on the internet or through the DIY shops, or maybe you go and ask an expert. So with the printer it might be slightly different. With the printer there is not one solution but several good solutions. However, I imagine it's the same for everyone. We don't buy printers all the time. So when we are in the situation of having to choose a new printer, they have many new features that we didn't know about, and we have to find out how they fit our requirements. What do we actually need? Do we need scanning? Do we need all these functions that the printers are? How important is the price? Maybe you want even to go and look behind the facade and find out that you know, the printer might be cheap, but they want to make a lot of money with replacements and ink and so on. So probably you go ask somebody, or you go and have a look at tests over the internet. But in both situations, with the window handle and with the printer, what you will find is that once you've done your analysis, once you've found out all the things, and if you've done that well, then the solution will work just as expected. There will be no surprises, so you can implement your solution and be quite sure to get the results that you're expecting. Now this will be different when we move to the next situation. Imagine you are the chef of a quality restaurant. The restaurant is famous for fresh market cuisine, especially seafood. The restaurant has a daily changing menu, but there is a certain line of what your brand stands for. There are some evergreens that you serve often. You know what your team can do. Each morning you go to the market. Abundance and quality vary from day to day. How do you shop now? Take a moment to reflect and come back. I imagine you have come up with quite an exploratory kind of shopping trip this time. You might have some intentions at the beginning, like for example you've said that sea bass in a salt crust. I haven't done that for a while, but you know that maybe they don't have enough sea bass in the catch of the day, or for example it's not good enough for your quality standards. You might also have some experience, like Henry's stand is usually good for shellfish, so you go and have a look what you pick there, but you're open as to the suggestions. Or you know something like your customers usually like the combination of shellfish with exotic fruit. So when you see a lot of ripe pineapples, you say, well, let's see what we can combine with these pineapples. In any way, what you want to do is probably try out things. You have one idea that you catch from one place, and then you go and see how you can combine these. You might also try out things with your customers. If they like it, you go on more in that direction. If they don't, you abandon this idea. You might also want to try out the different suppliers. They might make suggestions to you what usually their customers are buying or what they're doing with it, and you might follow some of these suggestions to find out how good and how reliable they are. So in any case, your procedure is rather dominated by trial and error. It's rather iterative. You will probably, if you would have a very fixed plan like with your grocery shopping, you would fail in that moment, because sooner or later you will find a situation in the market which does not fit to your plan. So that's what you shouldn't do. Quite an opposite behavior. Now, for the last kind of situation that we're going to explore, there are going to be two varieties. So in the first setting, you are in a small mountain village. The neighboring valley, which is your only access to the rest of the world, has been devastated by heavy floods. The supplies of the village shop are incomplete and scarce, and vary from day to day, depending on what the shop owner could find or what some passing aid convoy dropped in the village. You cannot leave the place. How do you shop now? Again, you should take a quick moment for that, and then you come back to the video. Again, I expect your behavior in shopping has changed fundamentally now. You cannot afford to be choosy. You will take whatever there is, as long as you have something. You maybe even take more than you need for now, because you don't know whether the shop will have anything in the next days. You also, for example, cannot afford to go and have a look in other shops what they have, because when you come back, maybe other people will have bought that little supply that was there. So something is better than nothing, and then maybe you can improve and build from there. But you have to act first. You have to buy that thing. Maybe then you can go on the black market, exchange it against something else, or maybe you also learn some little criteria, some little handrails that you can find. Like, for example, you realize that if you buy rice, you will be able to cook it. So if they cut off the gas in the next days, you won't be able to do anything with that rice. And maybe some vegetables that you can also eat when they're raw, or some fruit might be more helpful for that. But anyway, the important thing is that you start acting very quickly. Now, let's have a look at another version of that, because that may be, an extreme version. Let's have a look at the luxury version of this one. So this time you're in an airport. Your flight has been delayed. Your phone and computer are out of power. You have no book to read. Bored, you stroll through the airport shopping area. In what way are your shopping decisions different? Again, take a moment and come back. So, how do you buy in an airport? I imagine you don't always buy what is necessary, what you necessarily need already. You also might not always buy what you think is the best, but it's just the best available. You're looking for a jumper and you would have preferred another color, but you buy you make more compromises towards the things that are on display. Usually also people might pay more than are ready to pay if they did the same shopping in their hometown on a Saturday afternoon. So similar to the village shop, you're very much exposed to the offer that is available, that is there. And similar to the village shop also, you might develop ways of dealing with that which are different. You might improvise a lot. You might, for example, spend quite a lot of time finding out about new kinds of gadgets that you wouldn't spend if you were on a Saturday afternoon in your hometown. So that's why we put these two examples in the same domain. Now this leaves us with 4 domains that we've explored: the grocery shopping, the packaged goods, the window handle and the printer, which is the second domain. The third domain would be the market for the chef of the restaurant, and the fourth is the village and the airport shopping. Now let's have a look at the Cynefin Framework. What is the Cynefin Framework actually? The Cynefin Framework is, as it says, a framework which claims to answer the following question. The question is, what do I need to know about the nature of my environment so I can adapt my way of responding to this environment? Now what we want to do is this: we want to explore each of the 4 corners of the Cynefin Framework and find out how they match to your shopping experience. Maybe you want to stop the video here again, have a look at the Cynefin Framework, and then come back and we go through it one by one. So the obvious domain, that's of course your grocery shopping. So in a generalized way, what you do is you sense first. That's when you find out that you're lacking toilet paper or toothpaste, and then you categorize. You say, okay, this is the kind of thing I need the car, so I do it on a Saturday afternoon. I go to that place. This is the thing I need by tomorrow, like for example milk or bread. So I go in the nearby small supermarket. And of course, once you have categorized that, you respond and you just go through your routine, you process your routine. When we talk about complicated, that's the example of the window handle and the printer. So again here you need to sense, you need to find out that you need something, you need to find out there is a market for something. But then the important bit is analysis. You go and find out what is exactly the model that you need, what are your criteria, what are the features that are on offer, what are the features that you actually need, and so on. All this is analysis, and once you've done that, you can be pretty sure that your shopping trip, when you actually go and buy it, will correspond to it, and also when you use it at home, that will correspond to what you found out in your analysis. In the complex domain, that of course responds to the shopping experience of the chef on the market. Now, to generalize that a bit more, a word that I like very much, or 2 words that I like very much to describe complexity, is intricate interdependency of things. So things depend on each other, They are conditions, they condition each other, but you can't see all these connections between the things. There are not everywhere connections, so you end up with a lot of not knowing what's going on, not being able to explain. That's why the analysis would not work. So what you see here when you look at the generalized way of response is that you don't start by sensing, but you start by doing something, by probing. You can only find out how the system reacts by actually doing and trying out something within the system. So for example, you can only find out what the customers like by serving them something and see how they react. If they, if you give them a questionnaire, that might still be wrong because they stick to what they already know. They're not open for new things, maybe, or just the opposite. They say, I can eat anything, and then you serve them something very exotic and they don't like it. So you have to try that out. The same thing with suggestions, for example, from your suppliers. You have to find out, to try out what you can do with it. Only then can you realize whether you can rely on what your supplier says. Whereas if he just says, I'm very reliable and so on, that doesn't count for anything. Now, the fourth domain is, of course, the chaotic that corresponds to the mountain village or the airport shopping. So here we have a lot of coincidence. Just what happens to be there must be good enough. So again, you don't start by sensing, you start by acting, but by really acting not in a probing way, but in a more binding way. So you have to actually buy the thing because otherwise it might be gone, and go on from there. So it's very much also time constraints might be very important. Do something is better than do nothing. And again here, once you hopefully learn something from doing, you might improve your way of acting. But the important bit was that you started by acting. Now, in the Cynefin framework, there is actually a fifth domain, the one in the center. Because usually you don't start by knowing where you are, you start by not knowing in which domain you are. So that domain in the center is called disorder, not in terms of being unorderly, but in the sense that you do not know where you are. Now, how could we connect this to our shopping experience? Well, imagine a situation where you are moving house. Now, in this moment, imagine, for example, you've got a job abroad, far away, across the Atlantic maybe, and in this job you've been there, you've signed the contract, and you've also found a place, a house or a flat, and you've signed that contract. Maybe you've taken a few pictures, but now you've got to prepare for the moving without being able to quickly go there and have a look. So maybe you don't remember exactly where all the plugs are, there are many things, you haven't measured everything. So you cannot make an exact plan, but something you can. Just you don't know everything from the very beginning. Imagine the different kinds of shopping that you have to do once you arrive. Also that you will know that you will have to do some shopping for your flat, but you don't know exactly what the different natures of shopping are that you will have to do. I'll give you some examples. So maybe when it's about buying cables and things like that, you will have to do it. Probably very quickly where to go, what you need, and so on. And that's a very obvious thing to do. There might be window handles, just to take that example. There might be things where you need a lot of analysis in order to buy the right thing. There might be things which have this intricate interdependency. Like, for example, you might say, this is a good occasion to throw away our old sofa. We're not going to move that one, and we're going to buy a newer, bigger sofa. Now, depending how big that will be, you might want to place it in a different part of your living room. Depending where you place it, that might mean a different lamp for reading, or that might also be that, depending on the wall where you place it, on the opposite wall there is not enough space for the really big TV screen, so that one goes in the bedroom. And so you realize how connections build up, and basically you cannot foresee all of that. You will have to go and try out and then build it on from there. And there might be also some chaotic situation, like, for example, you will have to get just any kind of available lighting for the staircase, because once the builders move away their scaffolding, there is no way you can reach up there and fix something. So the first thing you see, as soon as it's good enough, you're going to buy that one, because tomorrow the builders will move away the scaffolding. So if you apply this back to the Cynefin framework, what you see is that yes, the various parts of your shopping needs and experiences do belong to one of the 4 domains. You just don't know which one yet, and therefore we place it in the middle. So over time you will find out more about that. So at the beginning, the central part of disorder, or the unknown, will be actually very big, and the corner parts will be very small. And over time what you realize is then, okay, this one belongs to this domain, and so on, and more elements actually are clearly attributed to a domain, and the central part becomes smaller. That's how you can work with the Cynefin framework. So what we've done now is we've connected something as practical as shopping experiences to the Cynefin framework, and we've seen how the Cynefin framework can be used in order to come from the realization of the nature of your environment to some handrails as to how you have to change your response to this environment. I'm sure that by now you are capable also of applying this to any kind of practical environment in which you find yourself. If you want to find out more about Cynefin and complexity, one thing is of course to Google it. Now you know how to write it, and also maybe you might want to Google the author of the Cynefin framework, Dave Snowden, especially on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. If you want to learn more about complexity, and especially about how to specifically deal with complexity, go into more detail about that, you might want to click the link on palladio.net, especially our public training section, and you will find something there. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and see you some other time.